Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I am Matt Connarton, and with me, of course, the Honorable Gary S. Hopper.
Matt! Funny seeing you here.
Really?
Hey, so Matt,
I'm here a lot.
You are.
Yeah.
You're a wicked lot.
Like all day.
So anyway, I got the today. I got the manual of the general court booklet today.
So is that if you need, if you need to fix it, the court, you can?
Yeah,
use
it's
that?
like it's got schematics and everything.
Nice. That'd be very confusing for me.
But what is weird is they give it to you when you're almost done the first part of the session. So you're just kind of winging it, pretty much all the way up until June.
Doesn't seem fair.
No, it doesn't seem right. But anyway,
I got that on day one.
Exactly.
I
You would think
this.
if you're going to get a manual for the general court, which the general court is what we call it in New Hampshire. It's actually the New Hampshire, the House and Senate. Yeah, if you're going to get a manual, you should get it before.
It's like if you buy a car, they don't give you.
They don't give you the manual.
Like
It's here. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What do you mean I was supposed to check my oil? I didn't know I was supposed to check my oil. I didn't say anything. I didn't have a manual. Right?
Exactly. That happened to me. My first car when I was 19. It was an old Mercury Lynx, and I seized the engine.
Seized it?
Didn't have any oil in it. And I didn't know how to check the oil.
No. Why would you? You didn't have the manual.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I was told, and I learned.
No one told me. I haven't learned nothing.
Yeah, and he can prove it. Tell him, Matt.
That's
Tell
right.
him.
I don't learn nothing.
Ain't learned nothing.
In other words, if you were half as dumb as you looked, you'd be twice as dumb as you are.
That's a math question. You better
Figure it
hear.
Oh, I'm getting a headache.
Figure it out.
Use that.
Half
Yeah,
as
look,
dumb
see what
as
I got.
look.
I got today.
I'd be half
Is,
as dumb as I look, I'd be twice. That's the tough one. You got to try it.
Yeah.
Wait.
Ooh, it's a brain twister.
It sounds like the one from Lord of the Rings. At the beginning of Lord of the Rings, when he says, "I like half as many of you as I." You remember that?
No, because I've never seen any of those all the way through. Bilbo?
Bilbo was talking to his relatives, and he's basically getting ready for this grand departure, and he says something about if I maybe somebody can call in with the answer, but it was if I like half as many of you as I know and know half, I don't forget what it was.
Yeah. You can fool all the people some of the time, and you can fool some of the people.
Or what we learned this
You can't fool all of the people all of the time.
Yes, looks like what we learned from Michael Douglas this week that you can please most of the people most of the time, but you could get throat cancer. So,
yeah, that's a deep subject.
That's sick. I don't know why you said. Oh, so just last week we had.
You know who's going to get you now? The people, activists.
I know. I'm probably a bad person again. Ed Williams was with us last week, and he's talking about his journey through Christianity. And this week we're picking up on that because it was really cool and very interesting, but we only got up to the point where he met somebody who shared the Word of God with him. But we got to cover a couple things first. But I just wanted to make sure you knew who was commenting. So what did we do today? We had an ice cream social. The speaker had an ice cream social. That was an hour and a half.
That sounds fun.
I didn't go, and I'm not.
Like ice cream? What are you, a communist?
There was. The thing is a Democratic speaker.
Yeah.
Feeding ice cream.
Yeah. Oh.
Beware, beware of Greeks bearing gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And that would possibly place him out to be a cone head.
Yes, you could end up as a cone head if you went there.
Good.
Exactly. So no, I didn't go. Anyway, but so then before that, we spent an hour and a half on Senate Bill 47. Was it 47? My eyes stink.
You want to use my reading glasses?
No, that would make it too easy.
Yeah, all right.
I like challenges. So Senate Bill 47 was the bill we spent an hour and a half on. What it is the idea that if you get hurt in the war, you get a Purple Heart. If you're in battle, you are eligible to get a Purple Heart license plate.
Yeah.
Okay. Currently, under current law, if you have the plate and you pass away, your surviving spouse, when they re-up their registration, they have to get a new plate. They can't keep that plate.
Okay.
That sounds fair to me.
I think that was perfectly reasonable, but the Democrats wanted that the surviving spouse or whomever to be able to continue it ad infinitum.
So next year, it's going to be those who knew somebody who had
a Purple Heart.
Had a Purple
Right,
Heart.
exactly. Which
and
is
they were close friends.
Yes,
and that person passed.
Well, it's a spouse.
And, you know.
Well, it's just
But the plate is for the person.
Yeah.
Who, you know.
I can kind of see both sides of that one.
I see both sides. I voted
strong.
against it because
I'll stop there. If you have someone in your family who has a handicap plate and you're able-bodied and strong, you should be able to have a handicap plate too, because...
Well, you do that anyway. Like with the placard you can hang in your window, you just pass it around.
I know.
You see a lot of healthy people getting up and walking out of cars with...
Some slippery slopes are unavoidable.
Yes.
That was hard. I had to say that twice.
You could just go around them, you know.
You know, to be honest with you, I don't even ski, so I avoid the slippery slopes completely.
Hey, I'm going...
You're not a man of blind ambition.
No.
No. I'm going skydiving Sunday with my
Better you
favorite
than me,
son.
brother. Whoa, I keep my feet on the ground.
But it's that tandem one, because they say if you're just going to do it once, if you're not sure if you're ever going to do it again, you do tandem, where basically the guy holds on to you when you're hooked up. It seems a little bit, you know, I'm a little bit too homophobic for that. But
Any man holding on to me that close is better be a doctor.
Yeah, that's
or my brother.
Yeah. What if they get there and kind of like at the
I'm
restaurant?
not going to follow up with that.
Like the restaurant downstairs. What if they get there and say, "Do you mind the gay skydiver?"
You guys are going to get me
Yeah, you're going to get me in trouble.
now.
Oh, I'm in so much.
Matt.
I'm already in lots of trouble. You have no idea.
You're a bad influence on me. I was a nice person before I met Matt Connarton. Let's see, education. The Common Core is still in the news. National Propaganda Radio has been doing a series on Common Core in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And they haven't told you is that NPR gets a boatload of money from Bill Gates. The Gates Foundation is behind Common Core, and as far as I could tell, there was no objective reporting on it. At least I've listened to it all 3 mornings on NH National Propaganda Radio.
Was there a disclaimer? Like anything about? Oh, really?
No,
Well, that's disappointing. There should be.
No, there should be, and it was. They covered. You remember our guest Anne Marie Banfield?
Yes.
They have her to give the illusion that they're giving both sides of the equation. They have her on there for like 2 sentences and then discard it and go on to how great it is.
Really?
It's pretty pathetic.
Huh.
They should have an open discussion about it instead of just one-sided.
Right.
So that was that. The IRS is in big trouble still. Originally, it was thought that the IRS thing was just a couple of rogue people in Cincinnati, I think it was. But now I guess there's hundreds and hundreds of cases.
Deeper, yeah.
It's getting deeper and deeper, and the administration coincidentally knows nothing about it. You know, it's actually kind of funny when you think about it. They knew nothing about Benghazi. They knew nothing about the IRS. They really knew nothing about the Department of Justice, Newspeak Department of Justice, right?
Investigating those Associated Press.
Associated Press and Fox News. So basically, you've got an executive, because it's the executive branch, the President of the United States, the head of the executive branch, who absolutely knows nothing about what's going on in any of his agencies.
And the Attorney General didn't know a lot of stuff.
He doesn't know anything, no. And then the head of the IRS pleads the fifth. Or she was the acting head, because the other guy was kicked out, but he was kicked out like a few weeks before he was going to leave anyway.
Yeah.
So that was,
in other words, he retired with full benefits, but on paper, you know, they said, well, we let him go.
They take care of their own.
He's not coming back.
They do.
Give him a golden parachute. What's obnoxious about Lois Lerner, I think?
Yes.
It's not like if you get audited, you can't say, well, I'm not going to comply with this tax audit. I plead the fifth.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Well, when they ask you, you know, where'd you spend this money, and this money, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I plead the fifth. Try that at your next IRS audit. See how well that goes for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's just insane. It's also my contention that if you are a federal employee and you plead the fifth, you should be immediately fired. You no longer have a right to be in office, because by definition, if you're pleading the Fifth, you are refusing to incriminate yourself. If you did something that is so egregious that you are incriminating yourself, then therefore you should be fired.
I agree.
Okay, the Fifth is for people who are arrested so that they do not have to incriminate themselves, and or your wife doesn't have to incriminate you. Okay? But if you're a federal employee and you've done something that bad that you have to plead the Fifth, you no longer should be eligible to be a federal employee.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, actually,
absolutely.
You agree with me on something?
I do.
Yes, once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while.
Actually, in court, a wife cannot be compelled to testify against her husband.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
She can if she wants to, but she cannot be compelled.
Right, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying.
That's the Fifth Amendment,
That's if you're in a criminal case. This wasn't a criminal case, and you can't be under the Constitution obligated to basically to hang your own, tighten your own noose. I thoroughly agree with that. But if you have information that would do that to yourself, and when you're on the clock as a federal employee, well, by definition, you did something pretty bad, and you shouldn't be. You can't be employed.
Right.
Yeah, and we have every right to demand transparency from our government
They
agencies.
de-
We
all
pay
the
their
time.
salaries.
We pay their salaries. Like up
Yeah.
at the State House, if we have a meeting, I'll give you an example. We get messages back from the Senate that the House Judiciary Committee gets a bill on the floor. We pass it off to the Senate. The Senate changes something, it comes back. We had 4 of those today. Okay, and so what we had to do to get together as a committee and to verify whether we wanted to agree or to concur or to ask for a committee of conference. And our chairman was told that meeting has to be at least in the hallway. The reason it has to be in the hallway and not in the House chambers is because in the House chambers, regular citizens are not allowed in there.
Oh.
Okay? So therefore, things could be said and people wouldn't be able to listen. It had to be in the hallway, just basically it's convenient, but it had to be in the hallway because people had to be able to sit there and listen to what we're talking about. It can't be private.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but that's what's going on in D.C. It's
Right.
You've got a federal government, and you know as well as I do, if it was George Bush was the president of the United States now, and the IRS had audited Occupy Wall Street and audited all these pro-democratic groups, and the George Bush administration had been spying on the New York Times and MSNBC, and you name your scandal. You would not be able to hear anything else on the news.
Yeah, every newspaper in the land and the country would be calling for his impeachment.
Absolutely.
Well, I have to say though, I've been seeing a lot of this story and hearing a lot of this story, and I'm not someone who gravitates to conservative media. I mean, I don't watch Fox News.
I know.
At all, to be honest, but this story's getting a lot of coverage.
It's getting some coverage, but remember when it was Nixon, it was when you had those hearings, it was on regular TV.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay? You didn't have to go to C-SPAN to watch...
Well, you didn't have all that network anyways at that time.
Right.
But it was big news.
Very different media landscape then.
Yeah. But anyway, so that stuff, I'm getting fired up.
You're becoming unleashed.
Unleashed.
Oh no, that's me. Never
That's
mind.
you. You're the unleashed.
I get really confused.
Yeah, we're hand grenades here. Not
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you...
I have a head injury.
You've been called unleashed because you're a man of dogged determinism?
I wish that were the reason.
Yeah, no, it's completely different.
Yeah, it's something disgusting.
I'm just
Yeah.
a,
Anyway, some good stuff happened to Gary. I have a hard. People who watch the show, I got glaucoma and I got kicked out of work a couple of years ago as a tool maker because my eyes aren't any good. So anyway, I've been having a hard time zeroing my lasers from my pistols.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell, especially during the day, a laser's kind of really not that excellent for daytime shooting. So what I did is I set up, yesterday I set up it was such a nice day, I set up my camera with the 60 times zoom on the target, and then I could see exactly where the laser was hitting and then start pulling the trigger. So I zeroed my 9mm and when I first started shooting, I could barely hit a paper plate
Yeah.
at 40 feet.
Yeah.
And then after the using the zoom on the camera, I got that down to about, I don't know, what is
What do you
that?
have, pictures of politicians that help you to aim?
No, Tinky Winky.
Tinky Winky. Was
anyway.
that one of the was that one of the Teletubbies? All right.
Which is fine, because that, well, talking about shooting a Teletubby won't get the Secret Service notified.
No, not yet.
necessarily,
Not
but-
yet. Politicians might get the IRS on me. Right?
That's right. That's right.
They're worse than... Anyway, so that's politics for today. Did anything else happen that we forgot to talk about? What else is in the news?
I mean, that's kind of the big. I mean, like I said, the IRS thing I've been seeing a lot of coverage on. That's kind of. I think that's kind of dominated. I mean, there's a lot of other things that don't get as much coverage as I'd like.
Do you remember what the lady? There's a lady that testified before Congress yesterday. I forget what state, probably Cincinnati, Cleveland, or Ohio or something. I forget where she was from, and she was talking about how she really wasn't that political. She voted, but she didn't care. And then she saw the bailouts. It was her. The big issue was, bailing out, this company and this company and this company, and their taxes are going up to pay for all these Wall Street billionaires so that they don't lose money, and their tax money's going to pay them off. And she started her and her husband got really tweaked, and so they heard about the Tea Party, so they wanted to start their own local Tea Party group, and they went to the IRS, and then the IRS is contacting them and asking for a list of donors.
Yeah.
A list of emails to the donors, the political beliefs of the donors. Are anybody
They're overstepping their bounds.
Are any of these donors thinking of running for office? Yeah. They released, which is supposed to be secret, because remember back during the what do you call the movement with Martin Luther King? What's that called?
Civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement. The Supreme Court upheld that the donor information and things like that from these groups could not be accessed.
That's right.
Okay.
To intrude upon that was to violate our protections against unreasonable search and seizure.
Right. And the reason the Supreme Court held that is because if you supported back then, if you gave money to Martin Luther King and his group, you would be targeted and could be killed.
You might wake up with a cross on your front lawn.
Yeah, a cross being burnt on your front lawn. So the Supreme Court said, no, that can't be made public. Yeah. So guess what the IRS did with that information from this group?
Made it public.
They made it public.
Well, it's like that scandal that happened in Westchester County, New York, where the district attorney was appealed to by this anti-gun group to provide information of all those who had licensed firearms.
You mean a pro Second Amendment group?
No, at first it was anti. They wanted to advertise.
Oh yeah.
All those in that county who had licensed legal firearms, and they got that information, Westchester County, New York, and they printed a map with dots on the map. And they got away with it. They got away with it.
But that's different because that was actually public information.
Well, that was their reasoning. It's public information.
It's creepy, though.
But you know what?
It is creepy, and it's.
If you print a schematic of the city of Manchester and you have a dot on every apartment building that collects food stamps or some other kind of welfare, this whole city would be in an uproar and say that's
against my constitutional right.
You shouldn't do that. I mean, that's demeaning. People should have their privacy. So they got away with it.
Yeah. That was.
Westchester County, New York.
I mean, whether or not it's legal, that doesn't necessarily affect.
Exactly right. So they came.
Right.
The next county north was Putnam County, New York, and they came to that guy and they said, "We want that information." He says, "You're not getting it." They said, "Well, that's public information." He says, "I don't care. You're not going to print a map. What about the rights of these gun owners? Every wacko running the streets is going to know where there's guns, and so." No, leave them alone. They got their guns legally. Yep. Leave them alone. They said it's public information. You know what the district attorney of the county of Putnam said? Take me to court.
Yeah. There you go.
They didn't.
So anyway, the IRS is it's insane. And what's her name was after she pled the fifth. Would she go on paid leave? Lerner, yeah. She got paid leave.
Oh yeah, the system takes care of its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
They're watching out for themselves, and it's eventually something's gotta give because if you heard the lady, I think it was Becky or something like that. I think I posted on my Facebook page, but if you listen to this woman, she was like in tears.
Really?
Because she's seeing her country. The one she didn't, like I said, she's just kind of off the boat once in a while, and that's it. She did her thing.
Yeah.
And then she, gets really active and realizes how perverse and corrupt the system has gotten. She was on fire. It was a really awesome YouTube video of her yesterday.
I'll have to look at that.
You have to.
Yeah.
Oh, not right now.
Oh, good. I was going to say.
Yeah. Anyway, Ed. So this is wonderful. We'll go back over to Ed. Last week, you talked about how you
repented and gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ.
First you lived a life of. You started out in a Christian home,
we actually have a call before you get too far. Do you want to take this? Okay. Hi, welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Yeah, Roland.
Hi, Roland.
I want to know if the Medicaid bill is going to be on plate to be voted on pretty soon.
You mean at the State House?
Right.
I think that was. Where would that be? Municipal and county relative to permanent ways and means relative to.
New Hampshire doesn't subscribe to that. You know what I mean? To say expand it.
Yeah, they're expanding everything. They're expanding Common Core and everything else. So.
If you get that Medicaid, you'll probably have all the illegals on there. Hey, by the way, I like to say 3 little statements that, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
I'm here, actually.
Here's 3 statements that is so, anyway, here they are. Who's the one that says, let's pass this bill so we can see what's in it?
That was Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, right. Who's the one that said, if you're successful, you don't do it by yourself?
That would be a Barack Hussein Obama.
I would argue that was taken out of context, but okay.
But anyway, go ahead.
Who's the moron that says, what does it matter? It's over.
That would be Hillary Clinton.
Imagine that. Those are the people running this country.
Yeah, I know.
Help us out. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care. Anyway, so Ed was talking last week. I remember my uncle came in. My uncle is a preacher. He went to Harvard Divinity School, and he came downstairs, and I was blowing smoke rings and playing pool at my cousin's house. And he says smoke rings and pool are a sign of a misspent youth. So anyway, so you misspent your youth
into my 20s.
Into your 20s.
Many of us do.
Many, not all.
Not all.
Okay,
not
I was. Never mind.
I was a paragon of virtue myself.
Paragon.
Yeah, you like that?
I like that.
Yeah,
that's a good word.
Paragon is a good word.
It is a good word.
Because virtue needs to be defined.
Yeah, that probably.
Oh, yeah. That's where it gets a little sticky.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, you guys are sick. Anyway, so. Yes, so you kind of rejected Christianity because of the.
I fundamentally rejected.
Christians, anyway.
And
because of the way they treated blacks, theoretically, we're in a Christian country,
yes.
And blacks were treated as second-class citizens.
That's which I found that very disturbing. And
absolutely, I had the same experience when I was first trying to, because I was in search of for a lot of years, and when I went to a lot of Christians, this is during the name it, claim it era, and when I went to a lot of Christian churches, they would tell me, well, if you really believe and you pray and ask God to heal you, with my case it was my ailments, that you will be healed. Well, first of all, that's not biblical. Second of all, it turned me off because I'm going. It didn't make sense, because if that was true, then Paul never would have gone through what he went through, because he asked God to relieve one of his ailments, and God said, no, but I'll give you the strength to get through it.
The trouble with that kind of thing is they're mixing a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
Jesus did specifically say that he did not do, one of the gospel writers report that Jesus did not do miracles in certain towns because they had no faith. Now, that's reporting what Jesus chose not to do, and what he made comments about people should have faith. But to twist that into saying to a blind man or someone suffering, you are suffering and will continue to suffer because you don't have any faith, that is cruel.
Yeah,
it's cruel.
I agree, yeah.
But so it's the same kind of thing. It's like I kind of just looked at it and says, that can't be, and I didn't know enough about the Bible to know that they were wrong, so it was kind of confusing. And like you say, you can look at how we treated the black people in the United States, or the Indians for that matter,
yes.
and realize how, although we're supposed to be a Christian country, the things that we justify in our minds are so unbiblical and unchristian-like.
When the term is used, Christian country, too, it's almost says nothing and says everything. Well, this is sidetracking, and I'd love to talk about it, but not all the founding fathers were what we would call Bible-believing Christians.
Right.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, for one, did not believe that Jesus Christ was God who came in the flesh. He was what it was called then a deist. He believed that there was a God up there, but he didn't interact into human affairs.
He did believe in a lot of what Christ taught.
The ethics.
Because that's where the Jeffersonian Bible comes from, is taking the things that Jesus taught and putting that in a separate.
Well, he would ink through. My brother has seen that Bible, by the way.
Really?
He inked over any references to the miraculous works of Jesus.
Interesting.
Because he did not believe that Jesus Christ was anything more than a man.
Yeah.
Okay? And so he rejected the idea that Jesus did miracles, walked on water and stuff like that.
Sure.
Because to him, Jesus was worthy of respect and honor as a simple, good moral teacher.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is not any different than many Jews' views of Jesus, many Buddhists, many atheists. They view Jesus Christ as a good man, honest man, his reputation is pure, and so on, but they certainly don't believe him as God in the flesh. And I was brought up in that, but I had sin on my mind, and I wanted to live my life, and that's where I was.
So you came kind of in the same vein as I did. We kind of had a problem with Christians more than we had Christianity. So then one day, we'll pick up where we left off. One day you were...
I was witness to what we call talk
you
to by a
were
straight
witness to, because you saw a black guy witnessing to a couple of white guys, and you went over there to kind of back up the black guy because you thought some trouble might happen.
That's right. I was going to introduce them to the pavement if they started.
I was listening last week.
You were paying attention.
I was going to introduce them to the pavement if they started anything racial.
Right.
And the guy turned around and asked me about my soul and where I was, and
what a jerk.
That started it. That started it.
That was very intrusive of him.
I know.
I'm glad that he intruded.
So anyway, pick up from there.
So anyways, I gave my life to the Lord. I repented. I submitted myself to Jesus Christ.
You want to start
yes, I wanted to read something very brief from the New Testament book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 17. And it says, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things have passed away. All things have become new. Because Christ has given us the ministry of reconciliation. In other words, our sins separate us from God. And so when we come to Christ, we become reconciled to God. So God reconciles sinners. It is a falsehood to tell people that, for instance, that God hates you so much that he's not interested in you. No, that's not the gospel. God hates the sin, and he wants you to be reconciled to him. And Jesus was the way. So I did. I returned home to New York. I was like the prodigal son. My home church, they'd been praying for me, and they were all very, very happy. And, of course, I was still fuzzy in between the ears from LSD and a lot of stuff. But God miraculously did a work. And here I was about to be 25, and I was faced with the question, now what am I going to do with my life? Previously, I just did pickup work when I ever work. I'd either quit or get fired. And I got fired from a number of jobs because I didn't care.
Yeah.
Didn't care. and I did physical labor kind of work. So now,
Well, how could you have any respect for anybody that would have you as an employee?
yeah, that's right. I'm reminded of that. That's reminds me of that statement by Groucho Marx, who
Yes,
said
yeah,
he wouldn't
yeah.
think highly of any organization that
Would
would have
have
him
him
as a member.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I was faced. Now, what I'm going to do? I'm going to be 25. I have no trade. Virtually everything I was good at was either illegal or immoral. And so, what am I going to do with my life? And I was faced with that straight issue, and I was just had this zeal that that God had planted inside me, that I wanted to reach people with the gospel. I wanted to tell them what Jesus Christ had done for me. I really did. Trouble is, you can't get paid doing that, or at least I couldn't, and so you got to figure something out. So me and my brother moved in together. I got an apartment, and for the first time, I got a job and I stayed at it. And I was working, and the following fall, I started college. Vietnam War was still on, but it was winding down. It was fall of 1972. It was a community college, and lo and behold, I could get connected with a Bible Christian students group on campus. The way that I got attracted to that was I met some fine young ladies who invited me, and I went, "Well, hey, now this is all right."
That's what got me into Scientology.
Yeah.
So, and then they come to me and they said, because I was so bold, I was testifying. I stood up in class and I was telling people what Jesus had done for me, and the teacher was all. This was a secular college campus, and they asked me to be the student leader, and I said, "Whoa, wait." I said, "You got the wrong guy. Me being a leader, I'm still getting to know the Bible. I don't even know." But I sought counsel, and I talked to my pastor, and he said, "You ought to do it. God is setting you apart. Go ahead." I said, "Pastor," he said, "Well, you just meet with me regularly. We'll go, study the Bible. You'll get to know. Pray. Get on your knees. Ask God." And I got my baptism in ministry there on a college campus, meeting and talking and debating with black militants, anti-war people. The gay rights movement was just starting out. Feminists, you name it. It was wide open. And the following year, and I said I loved it. It drove me to the Bible and it drove me to prayer, and I loved it. So the following year, I enrolled at a Christian college to study for the ministry. And I got involved in the Greenwich Village gospel team. Oh, I loved it. I had a great aunt who lived in Greenwich Village when I was a kid. And so here I am on the streets of Greenwich Village, 1973, and with my Bible, talking to people and having wonderful, fantastic experiences, and trying to be a good student. And lo and behold, I get into a sledding accident on campus a year or two later, and I fracture my back, and I have to drop out of school. And hospital time, and oh man, and finally was able to return, but then I ran out of money, because I'm a grandson of immigrants. I don't come from money. My father never had a new car in his life. We never went on vacations. We were not middle class. We were working class. I grew up with family who spoke broken English. The original name was Wilhelmsen, from Norway, and so I just had no more money. So I started just doing all kinds of work. And eventually I moved into Manhattan, and to a ministry called the Lambs Ministries, a half a block from Times Square, and I loved it. I was sad at first because I had just broken up. I was engaged to be married, and it wasn't working out. So I moved in, and here I was out on the streets, just a Bible. And I would go to strip joints, talk to the bouncers outside these strip joints. I would go up to it with my Bible, and I didn't carry my small one. I always go with my big Bible because I wanted people to know what I was all about. And I had all kinds of experiences. One day I met these 3 prostitutes who came on to me, and they said, "Hey, baby," and I says, "Don't baby me." I said, "I'm a man of God. I'm not buying." And they said, "You're a what?" And I says, I'm the minister of the gospel." And so one of them said, "Do you think you could read us something from the Bible?" I said, "Sure." So I sat down on the curb with 3 prostitutes on 8th Avenue in Manhattan, opened up the Word of God, and had some prayer with them. And one of them was starting to be moved, and she says, "I know what you're saying is right. Pray for me." So I had all kinds of interesting experiences.
I'm curious, when you would approach someone like bouncers at a club, I mean, did you feel confident, or did you have to kind of steel yourself and
Well, the
work
thing
up
of it
to
is that a number of things. This back then, I was a I was a younger man. I was a bigger guy.
Yeah.
But my confidence came from the fact that I believed that which I'm saying, and I wanted to tell people.
Yeah.
So they tell me to go F yourself, or something like that, and I said, okay, I'll be back tomorrow, and but I would just go on. I said, here, I would identify myself. I would say, hi, I'm Reverend Ed. I'm a street preacher.
So you weren't intimidated. You just
because I'd moved in some dangerous circles before, and I knew the way things are.
Yeah.
And one guy told me to go to hell, and I said, I can't. And he said, why not? I said, because Jesus Christ has paid the price for me. I'm going to be going to heaven. I said, however, if you don't get right with God, you could go to hell. And so
he didn't like that.
He didn't like that.
No.
But I remember one instance. I would go up to play, but I would identify myself first of all.
Yeah.
And I straightforward, and I wouldn't scream and yell and wait, flail away with the Bible.
Right.
I was just straightforward, man to man, and God opened doors, and I think men appreciate it. I mean, a lot of them didn't want to hear it, but I was talking to this one guy, and his street name was Buddha. Chains. This was the 70s, the disco era.
Yeah.
In Midtown Manhattan, and stuff like that. And he gave me a bit of a rough time, and I said, okay, I'll and I didn't belabor it. Somebody didn't want to hear from me, I just moved on.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And so I came back the next day, and he said, he talked to me for a little bit, and then I came back another time, and he said to me one time, he said, I know what you're saying is true. I said, oh, you do? He said, yeah. He said, I was in a Christian program, Teen Challenge. I dropped out. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I says, I know that what you're saying, that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and I know I need to get right with God. He says, do me a favor, keep coming back and talking to me. I'll take care of things. Huh. This guy was built like a wall with arms, and people would come by and see me with the Bible, and they say, what's he doing? And the guy would say, he's with me. It's over, right? No discussion. He said, okay. So I continued to go back to this fellow, and he was drinking up what I had to say.
Yeah.
It was just the Spirit of God. And one time I went back, and he said, I'm going to leave this. I need to get right with the Lord. I know I know I'm a sinner, and I need to get right with God. And pray for me. I'm about to make a decision. I need to do it. So one time I went back, and I said, "Where's Buddha?" And they said, "Oh, he left. He got God or something like that. He's no longer working here." I said, "Thank you, Lord."
He got God or something like that.
Another time I was doing some preaching, and a gang of guys started coming after me.
You had to be intimidated in that scenario.
Well, it's 5 guys. It's 5 guys. I have to admit, I was nervous.
Yeah.
5 of them, street dudes, punks, coming out, and they're edging, and they said, "Shut up, preacher. We don't want to hear anymore." And the Holy Spirit gave me boldness. Huh. And I just said, I'm a man of God. You need the Lord Jesus Christ, and I'm not going to shut up.
Wow.
You need the Lord. And they said, we're going to mess you up. So they started moving in on, and this is the absolute truth. They started moving in on me, and within a minute, there was a swarm of cops there. Huh. They were up against the building, getting patted down, and my most vivid memory of that experience is there's one guy getting patted down by the cops, and here I am right next to him with my Bible proclaiming the gospel to the crowd, warning them that there's a result of sin. It was only the Lord. Only the Lord.
Right.
Really. And I was back and forth, and eventually I just started getting more involved in the ministry, and I got called to pastor a church. And I thought, whoa, me? I was single at the time. And I took counsel again, and I didn't finish my college degree work for preparation for the ministry until I was 48 years old. I was finally able to return to college at the age of 47. I was given some money to return to college, and I returned, and I finished in 1 year at the age of 48. I was a year and a half younger than the president of the college. And I finally did it.
Yeah.
I finally finished my degree work. But God is, I've had, some interesting experiences. I was telling Gary on the way over here, I was working briefly. I got into a serious car accident. I was broadsided, and I went out to to Colorado to recuperate. My sister was living out there, and they paid for me and they enabled me to come out there. And while I was recuperating, I got involved in a small mission, gospel mission in the city, and just a humble work. And they had food pantry and clothing and household things and stuff like that. And they wanted me to preach in the parking lot because people hung out in the parking lot waiting for the mission doors to open. So they said, would you come every day, 15 or 20 minutes before and preach the gospel? And I said, well, sure. So one day, and I would always hang out afterwards and talk to people. Mm-hmm. And so one day I'm there, and one guy, and I could smell him coming. If you lit a match, it'd be an explosion. And he'd had a taste of the bottle that morning. And he's a preacher. He says, you got a pair of pliers in that mission? I said, pair of pliers? I said, well, we probably got a pair of pliers. Why? He said, I got a rotten tooth. I need to get out. If you get me a pair of pliers, I could take care of it. I said, you're not putting me on, are you? He said, no. So I went into the mission, and I got a pair of pliers and a paper towel, and I went out, and he's standing in line, and he went, and the blood and the people got gross, and he said, thank you, preacher, and gave me the pliers. So I've had some interesting experiences.
That kind of thing just gross.
There was at that particular time, the city was seeing a lot of Mexican street gang activity in Colorado, and there was a lot of things going on. And one day I saw this young fellow coming into the mission, and he kind of looked out of place. So I kind of walked over to near where he was, and since I was taller than him, I happened to look down his shirt, and he had a big machete tucked underneath his shirt.
Yeah. That's not something you want to see
so,
necessarily.
I prayed, and I went over to him, and I said, this place is a place of peace. You won't need that in here. He says, gotcha, preacher.
Wow.
And no problems.
Wow, good.
No problems. So I've had some interesting experiences over the years. God has taken care of. One day I was after I moved out of the city, I still was involved, and I driven my car in, and I was out on the streets all night long with different people and this and that. And I came back. My car was parked in a real dark, kind of a dangerous area in Manhattan. And when I got to my car, I noticed a fresh stream of blood splattered across the hood of my car. And that kind of sent a chill down my back.
I would think so.
I was looking underneath, and so I can say that God has spared me in any number of times. I just really some interesting. I had to jot some things down because I had forgotten some of the things, but the Lord is just. I was telling about the time that I got rescued by Muslims. Should I tell that story?
Yeah, that's very cool.
All right, I was doing some activity at Brooklyn College, which at that time was. Now, I want my listeners to understand this has got nothing to do with anti-Semitism, but at that time there was a very, very militant Jewish presence and antagonism against Christian preachers and so on at that time.
Yeah.
And so I was there involved, and I'm talking to a bunch of students who are very, very, very militant, and they go away, and I turn to him, talking to a guy, and he said, "Oh, I'm not Jewish. In fact, I'm an atheist." And we're having a good conversation. You know, I appreciate honesty. Mm-hmm. Really, yeah. You know, be straight with me. You know, if you don't buy the Bible, the cross, be honest. You know, let's engage. And because it's not my work anyways, it's only the Spirit of God that changes a person's heart. I'm just a vessel. And we're having a good conversation. So these militants come back. And they started accusing me of being anti-Semitic because I'm preaching Jesus Christ, and and then the bigot word. I get called a religious bigot. Whereupon this atheist guy says, "I'm an atheist. This guy's a Christian. We're having a great conversation." He said, "If anybody's bigots, you are." He says, and then he says. It is no wonder that Hitler killed millions of you guys in World War II.
Oh, yeah. Ouch.
Yeah. And there was a riot. And I'm telling you, I said, Lord, it's over now. You know who rescued me?
Who?
2 Muslim security guards.
No kidding.
Yeah. They ushered me out of the campus.
Yeah.
They said, you need to get out of here. And he said, by the way, he says, we're Muslims.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. It was really fascinating. But God is just. I just wanted to share just a few things that God had done.
It's just awesome when you're in a circumstance or in a situation where you know, typically after the fact, but at the time often, you know God put you there at that time for that reason. It's just amazing.
Well, yeah. The thing of it is that I kind of ran the street scene and different things. So I had a heart for that. I had a feel for that too. But I appealed to God. I said, Lord, use me. And the thing of it is, in our relationship with the Lord, is that we are to be available for Him to be using us. And God is a God of surprises. You know, really, for me to, face off against 6 guys who are out to do me harm and tell them they need Jesus, not my money, and that they better get right with God and do it now, that's absurd in the human.
Yes.
But for all of a sudden, I don't know, somebody must have called the police. I don't know how it was done or whatever like that, but I've had numerous situations like that. I was in ministry in Boston as I was an associate pastor of a small inner-city Boston church, and me and the pastor were in a neighborhood in Roxbury, meeting with some black pastors, having fellowship, having a good meeting, but it happened to be a neighborhood that was really crime-filled and a lot of agitation against whites, a very tough scene. And so we had our meeting, had a good time, and had a bite to eat, stuff like that. So we head back to our place. And that night I'm watching the news, and the reporter comes on and says, and we break to Roxbury, and they gave the street address where a gang of blacks had pulled 2 motorists out of a car because they were white and attacked them, and it was the exact same street that we were at less than an hour after we left.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
you did say last week that you did get broken up a couple times.
Oh yeah. I've been hit with a 2x4.
Why'd you get hit by a 2x4?
All right,
was it Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
No, I was doing my pastoral.
Because my wife does that to me.
Sure,
all the
there
time.
you go.
Yeah, but you like it.
Yeah,
That's different.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, I was doing my visitation, my ministry, and in this tough neighborhood, and I took a shortcut through an area.
What city were you in?
I was in Boston.
Yeah.
And it was an area of burnt out buildings and overgrown weeds and stuff like that. And so this guy comes after me, and he says, he had his hand in his pocket, and he says, "Give me your money or I'll blow your brains out." I said, "You don't have a gun. Don't talk that trash to me. Don't talk that nonsense to me." Yeah. Because you see, if you're in a secluded area, you don't hide your gun.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You stick it in someone's face. If there's nobody around, and you don't do that. If you're in a mob, you might do it.
Right.
So I said, "You don't have a gun." So he got angry, and he threw a kick at me, and I grabbed his ankle and I twisted. Now I had this in my pocket.
Yeah.
And when he threw the kick at me, it popped out of my pocket, and for a split second, I did something that I knew I shouldn't have done. For a split second, as I saw my New Testament going for the ground, I took my eyes off of him, and I went to grab the New Testament.
Yeah.
Right? And when I came back, he had this 2x4, and just, boom, got me right across the eye, and I was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks with a fractured eye socket.
Wow.
And of course, I'm standing there bleeding, and he ripped my wallet out of my back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent 2.5 weeks in the hospital. I was newly married. I'd only been married 3 months.
So was it worth it? Did he get any money?
Are you talking to a guy from New York and want to know if it was worth it that I didn't give up my money to a punk?
No. did he get money? Was it worth it for him, not you?
Oh, $11 or $12.
Huh. I don't know. Is that worth it?
I wouldn't think so.
No.
That's not very much.
Well, to him, but someone asked me, I said, "Well, you only had 11 or 12. Why didn't you just give it to him?" I said, "Hey, come on. I don't roll over.
Yeah,
like that.
You get knocked over.
Yes, I have to be knocked over. He had to work. I mean, really.
Yeah,
He couldn't handle me man to man, by the way.
So
I mean, he had hit me with a
did
2x4.
earn it. He really did earn it. Really. In a
So
lot of
2.5 weeks, I'm in the hospital. I get out of the hospital, and I'm all stitched up and bandaged up, and I'm shoveling snow off the steps of the church building, and a guy comes up to me with a sawed-off baseball bat, and he warns me to quit talking to people about Jesus on the street. That's exactly what he said to me. Because I was very vocal, very much in the neighborhood, very much out. I was a street man. Even though I was an assistant pastor, I was very much active, and he didn't like it to hear it. So he has a sawed-off baseball bat, and he said, "You heard me." This is exactly what he said. "I'm going to give you splinters for breakfast." That's exactly what he said to me.
That's good for the high fiber.
Right, yeah.
Now here's the
Trying
thing.
to help, yeah.
Here's the thing. I just got out of the hospital. I was all stitched up. I had a snow shovel, not one of those dinky little plastic ones. I had an old-fashioned wooden snow shovel with a steel blade, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, here I am. And I'm thinking, Lord, I already got smacked once. If this punk comes after me, I'm going to lay him out. That's just the way I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
So I always spent some time in the hospital. I got fresh stitches. If this guy comes after me because he doesn't like me being out there talking to people about Jesus, I'm going to lay him out. And so we had a few more words, and he left. My dear wife had just showed up to meet with me or stuff like that. But anyways.
So anyway, it's been a
It's been a roller coaster ride.
So
it ain't over yet.
It ain't over yet. So
over yet.
why did God move you to Goffstown?
All right, now this is an interesting thing. I said that we were out in Colorado. We were out for 3.5 years because I had gotten into this real brutal car accident, and my sister and her church had invited us out there, so we were out there for a while. But all our family and all the people, except my sister and a few. And my son, Elijah, his only remaining grandparent, was in Haverhill, Massachusetts. So we really wanted to get back east. So I made a connection with a man who pastored a very small little work in Manchester, not a big church. It has since closed. But he also had started this street mission in Nashua to reach out to the poor and homeless. And we started corresponding, and he was looking for somebody to join him in the work. So I said, well, I have to be sure it's of God. I said, he says, I don't have any salary for you. I said, well, at least you got to get a place for me to live. I said, he said, yes, I agree. I said, let's ask God to provide a place in 2 weeks from this conversation. 2 weeks. Before 2 weeks were over, I talked to him on the phone again. He said, one of the people in my church has an apartment in their has a basement apartment. They're willing to give you to come and work with me. Okay, so we moved lock, stock, and barrel back, and the basement apartment was in Goffstown. Goffstown. I mean, the work was in Nashua. I was thinking,
Right.
I'm a kind of an urban guy, and I was thinking, all right, Nashua, it's a mid-sized city, at least it's some, but I said, all right, I'm in Goffstown. So the interesting thing, and that was a little bit over 5 years ago, the interesting thing is that this man eventually resigned from the mission to devote all his efforts to his church, which was in Manchester. And the board of directors closed the mission, and I was out of a job, and the person who had given the apartment said, we want you out in a month. So there, in one fell swoop, 2008,
The rug got pulled out from under.
and we didn't have money for an apartment.
Right.
I said, Lord, what are we going to do? I got a young son, a wife, I got 3 cats. What's going on here? And I have to be out of here. I don't know. So I was writing applications. I was sending resumes, and it got down to 10 days before we had to leave. I had to rent a truck. I didn't know where I was going. I said, I got to move. So I went to the truck rental. They said, all right, where are you moving? I said, well, you can't put down nothing. So I had to make contact with the ministry that I was once on staff in New York, that I knew that they had housing, but we hadn't sealed the deal. Mm-hmm. So I said, it's a possibility. So I wrote them down, right? 10 days before we were supposed to move out, we get offered a place to live. Someplace else here in Goffstown.
Yeah.
We live on right down from Ace Hardware. And so 10 days, right down to the wire. And so we moved in there. And since that day in 2008, I have been preaching in churches, and typically you preach in the church. We got to close up?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So anyways, it's, as I say, it's not over. I'm active here in the Congregational Church in Goffstown. I do visiting, and I preach, and got a few things that we're praying for that the Lord might possibly do. And I've done all kinds. I've done security work and everything else to put food on the table, and God provides. I could tell you, I could sit here for the next 2 hours, tell you story after story of how food has showed up at our front door. Really.
Yeah.
God does work it out.
We needed milk 1 week, and we couldn't figure out how we were going to get milk. And the very next day, someone called up and said, "Could you use 2 gallons of milk?"
Wow.
Right.
Hadn't told anybody.
Yeah.
Sitting in the kitchen, me and my wife. Gee, we need milk.
Hey, anyway, we got to wrap this up. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I'm glad you started coming to the Goffstown Congregational Church, because it's a growing church, and it's a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun because of people like you.
It's where God is working.
Thank you. Quick, I forgot.
Yeah.
Supreme Court. It's all right if you get arrested now for them to take your DNA.
Oh, yes.
Okay? They find out you're innocent, they still got it. We don't care.
Yep.
So and the reason is because it could solve a crime.
Yeah.
So the solution, the obvious solution is we take DNA samples from everybody in the United States, because we could forget about your liberty. Forget about freedom. It's okay as long as if we only save one child and you lose all your liberty, it's worth it. Right?
You know that their reasoning is they say, well, we take fingerprints.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can rationalize.
I was arrested before I gave my life to the Lord. I mean, they say we take your fingerprint when we arrest you.
I know. I'm being facetious because you know as well as I do. You can rationalize anything, and they could rationalize having you tagged with a microchip
next time,
so that they can actually solve all the crime in the United States, because everybody's microchipped. They know where you were, they know when you were, and who you were with, and therefore they could solve all the crimes if everybody is just microchipped, and they had a microchip in everybody in the United States. Everything would be fixed, and then the government would have absolute control, and so therefore we would be safe.
That's right.
We'll see you next week.
We got to go. Bye, everybody.
Next thing you know, they'll be asking every man to give them a sperm sample. Just